Jeria could feel every bone in her body ache as they dragged her across the dry red dust. Her arms were tied tight behind her back. Her feet scraped across the ground. Blood mixed with dirt on her face. Her silver armor was cracked, her helmet long gone. Above her, the sky was an angry shade of orange. She could hear the wind, but no birds, no life. This planet was dead. The humans had won. Her people said humans were animals, brutal and savage. They said if captured, death would not come fast. It would be painful, slow, and full of shame. That was what Jeria expected as they shoved her into the cage. It was cold, made of steel and shadow. The door slammed shut behind her. She did not scream. She did not beg. She only waited for the first bite. Hours passed. No one came. Only the wind howled across the empty plains. Then a figure appeared. He was tall, not covered in thick alien scales or armor. Just simple black clothing, heavy boots, and a weapon slung across his back. A human male. His face was rough. Not young, not old. His hair was short, his jaw bruised. He looked like he had not slept in days. He didn't say anything. He simply looked at her. Jeria stared back, eyes full of defiance. If he came to torture her, she would not give him a single sound. Let him do his worst. He didn't move closer. Instead, he placed something just outside the cage. A metal container with steam rising from it. Food, real food. She could smell it, protein and heat. Her stomach twisted in hunger, but she did not touch it. She watched him. The man said nothing. He turned and walked away. His boots crushed the dirt with slow, heavy steps. Jeria waited. Maybe it was poisoned. Maybe it was just a trick. She left it untouched. Night came. Cold spread across the desert. Her body shook, teeth clenching. She wrapped her arms around herself. The wind bit her skin like tiny knives. She was preparing for frost to end her. Human returned. This time, he held a blanket. He stood outside the cage again. He watched her for a long moment, then slowly pushed the blanket through the bars. Jeria did not move. She thought he might change his mind. But he left again, without a word. She waited another hour. Her pride screamed at her not to take it. But her body gave in. She pulled the blanket close. It smelled of dust and metal, but it was warm. That night, she slept for the first time since the crash. The next morning, he came. Again. Same steps, same silence. He left food again. This time she moved toward it. She sniffed it, touched it. It was real. It was good. She ate fast, almost too fast. Her eyes kept looking up, expecting him to smile or speak. He did single quotes T-dot instead. He knelt near the cage. He pulled out a small med kit. He pointed to her arm, where blood had dried thick around a cut. She tensed. He didn't reach through the bars. He just showed her how to use the tools. Then he left them there, near the edge. Jeria didn't trust him. But the wound burned. She took the kit, cleaned the cut, and wrapped it the way he showed. This happened every day. The man came, brought food, left care supplies, always silent, always calm. Sometimes he sat nearby, cleaning his weapon or reading a data slate. He never showed fear. He never mocked her. Jeria began to watch him closely. She watched how he moved, how he stood still for hours, listening to the wind. Sometimes he looked up at the sky with eyes full of memories. Sometimes he fell asleep near the cage, sitting up, weapon in his lap. She began to wonder what his name was, where he came from, if he had a family, if he lost people too. One morning, he brought a small object. It was square and made of thin metal. A photo, bent at the edges. He showed it to her through the bars. A woman with dark hair, a small child in her arms. Jeria stared. The human's eyes changed as he looked at it. His face didn't move, but his heart showed in his silence. He pointed to the child. Then to himself. Jeria understood. His child, gone now. Maybe dead. Maybe lost in war. She didn't know why, but she wanted to say something. She wanted to tell him she was sorry. But her language would sound like noise to him. So she only bowed. Her head slightly. He seemed to understand. Days turned into weeks. The cage no longer felt like a prison. It was shelter, safety, a strange place of quiet. Jeria began to feel strange. She hated the silence, but feared the noise. She missed her people, but didn't want to go back. Not yet. One evening, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the land. The human returned. His walk was slower than usual. His steps dragged. He looked tired, dirt covering his face and arms. He didn't bring food. Just water. He sat beside the cage. He didn't look at her. He stared at the ground. Jeria studied his face. The lines were deeper, his eyes more hollow. She wanted to ask what happened. She wanted to know if he was hurt. Then he did something strange. He placed his weapon on the ground, close enough for her to reach through the bars. He leaned back. Closing his eyes, Jeria froze. Her eyes locked onto the weapon. Her hands curled into fists. This was it. This was her chance. She could take it, escape, kill him if she had to. She could run far, find her people, tell them everything, but her hands didn't move. She looked at his face. He was sleeping. Not pretending. Real sleep, trusting her. Why? What kind of monster gives his enemy a weapon and closes his eyes? What kind of enemy covers his prisoner with a blanket when the cold comes? What kind of soldier feeds the ones he's supposed to hate? Jeria's heart beat fast, not from fear, from something else, something she didn't understand. Her hand moved slowly, reaching toward the weapon. She stopped. Her fingers hovered near the edge of the bars. She pulled back. That night, she didn't sleep. She watched him the whole time. She watched him breathe, slow and steady without fear. And for the first time in her life, she felt safe inside a cage. Jeria did not touch the weapon. She watched it for hours. It sat there on the ground, quiet and waiting, just like him. The human, Rain Carter, slept beside the cage, arms crossed, chest rising and falling. He never moved. Not even when the cold wind returned. She could have grabbed the gun. She could have ended it, but something stopped her. Something deep inside her chest. It was not fear. It was not confusion. It was something harder to explain. Respect, maybe. Or trust. The next morning, Rain woke up slow. He stretched his arms, rubbed his eyes and looked at her. His face showed no fear, no anger, just calm. He picked up the weapon, checked it quickly, then stood. Jeria waited for punishment. It never came. He gave her water, just like before, then food, warm and filling. She took it without hesitation this time. He sat near the cage again, this time. Closer. Not a single word passed between them. For days this continued. A strange rhythm, quiet mornings, silent meals. Short glances, small gestures. Jeria began to copy him. When he placed a hand on his chest and said a word, she did the same. She didn't know what it meant, but it felt important. He repeated it slower. Rayn. She understood. His name. Jeria pointed to herself. She tapped her chest. Then said her name. He nodded. He said her name back. Not perfect, but close. Something in her smiled. They did this again the next day. Names became sounds they shared. Then came more simple signs. He would draw pictures in the dirt. She would guess. A tree, a ship, a weapon, a home. He laughed once when she guessed wrong. It was a soft laugh, like wind through old leaves. She didn't laugh, but her eyes did. Their days grew longer. Jeria no longer counted hours. She waited for rain instead. His face became her clock. His steps became her song. He brought her small things. A broken music device that played strange sounds. A book with old pages she couldn't read. A clean cloth to wrap her wound. None of it made sense at first. But she kept everything close. One day, a storm rolled in. Dark clouds, heavy with rain. And heat. The wind screamed across the desert. Rain came to her cage fast. He unlocked the door. She backed away, confused. He pointed to the sky. Then to the cave behind him. He said something in his language, fast, urgent. She understood none of it, but his eyes spoke clearly. Danger. She stepped out slowly. Her legs weak, but working. He didn't touch her. He just guided her with his hand. They ran together toward the cave. Lightning cracked behind them. Inside, the air was warmer, dry, safe. Jeria looked around. No trap, no chains. Just stone walls and old supplies. Rain sat down. She sat across from him. For the first time, there was no cage between them. Silence filled the space. She pointed to him. Rayn. He nodded. She pointed to herself. Zhe. He smiled. A real one. It changed his whole face. The hardness melted. She saw something younger behind the lines. Someone softer. She pointed to his chest again, then raised a brow. He paused. Then spoke. Human. She repeated it. Human. He nodded again, she thought. For a moment, then touched her own chest. Zerin. His eyes narrowed. Then he repeated. Zerin. The word tasted strange in his mouth, but she smiled anyway. That night, they shared a meal without bars. He handed her a piece of dried fruit. She took it without fear. He ate his quietly. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Jeria could feel something shift inside her. A wall cracking, a chain breaking. She had never known a human. She had only known stories, warnings, images of blood and fire. But this man, Rayn, was none of those things. Was careful, patient, kind in ways she didn't expect. She remembered her commander's words. Never trust the enemy. They will trick you with softness, then strike when you sleep. But Rayn had slept beside her cage. He had given her his weapon. He had led her out of the storm. If he wanted her dead, she would already be gone. She slept near the cave wall that night. Not far from him. Close enough to hear him breathe. In the morning, the storm was gone. The desert sky was clear again. They stepped outside together. The ground was wet. The air smelled clean. Jeria bent down and touched the earth. It felt like a beginning. They walked side by side back to the cage. But Rayn did not lock her in. He looked at her. She looked back. He waited. She stepped inside on her own. He closed the door, but left it unlocked. Something passed between them. A quiet agreement. That afternoon, he brought out a small box. He opened it carefully and pulled out another photo. This one was faded more than the first. A man and woman in uniform, both smiling, both human. He pointed to the man. Father. Then to the woman. Mother. He looked at the photo for a long time. Then closed the box. Rio watched the way his fingers held the memory. Gentle, like it was made of glass. She wanted to share something too. She reached into her armor and pulled out a small pendant. A dark stone wrapped in metal. She held it in her palm and showed him. Family stone. Rayn looked at it. He didn't touch it. But his eyes said he understood. We're two soldiers, two enemies. But somehow they were sharing pieces of their past. One photo. One stone. Two broken histories. That night, Rayn built a small fire outside the cage. He didn't speak. He just watched the flames. Jeria sat close to the bars, watching him. She mimicked his hand movement. The way he touched his chest when saying his name. The way he pointed to objects before saying them. She was learning. She wanted to learn. He noticed. He smiled again. Then began pointing at things and saying words slowly. Rock, sky, hand, Zeria. Repeated each one, Then she pointed at him. Rain. He nodded. Then he pointed at her. "Zhe Ria." Her chest felt warm. Not from the fire. From the sound of her name in his voice. That night, she did not sleep much. She thought of home. She thought of her people. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she still belonged to them. The next day, they didn't stay near the cage. Rain motioned for her to follow. She did. He led her to a hill nearby. From the top, they could see the wreck of her ship in the distance. Smoke still rose from it. The war had left scars on the land. Jeria looked at it. Her past, her failure. Her people might still be searching. Or maybe they had left her behind. She didn't know what hurt more. Rain stood beside her. Silent again. Then he reached into his pack and pulled out a canister. He opened it and placed it on the ground between them. Inside were small seeds. He picked one up and pressed it into the dirt, then handed one to her. Jeria stared at it. A seed. A new life. A new beginning. She knelt beside him and pressed hers into the soil. They did not speak, but something unspoken bloomed between them. They were no longer just enemies. They were something else. Now. Two lives growing roots in the same ground. Jeria woke up before the sun. She stepped out of the cage quietly, wrapped in the same blanket he gave her the first night. The air was cold and sharp. The sky above was dark blue, slowly bleeding into orange. She looked over and saw Rain, still, asleep beside the fire pit, arms crossed, face calm. He trusted her. No chains. No guards, no rules. She sat beside the fire and watched the flames turn to ash. Something in her chest was changing. She no longer thought of escape. She no longer feared him. That part of her had faded like smoke in the wind. Rain opened his eyes. He stretched, then looked at her with a slow smile. No words, just peace between them. After their simple breakfast, he pointed toward the east, toward a mountain range in the distance. He tapped his watch, then pointed to the supplies. She understood. They were going somewhere. Jeria packed what she could: food, water, a worn map. She left the cage door open. It didn't matter anymore. That cage was behind her now. They walked together across dry plains. The wind blew hard, carrying dust and old memories. The ground was cracked, broken by years of war and heat. But they kept moving, one step after another. Quiet, focused. They passed the wreckage of her ship. Burned metal, broken glass, twisted wires. A ghost of what brought her here. Jeria stood there for a while, staring at the ruin. Smoke still leaked from deep inside. No signs of life, no voices. No rescue. Rain stood beside her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She turned and kept walking. By noon, the heat grew strong. They found shade beneath an old transport truck, half buried in dirt. Rain pulled out a canteen and offered her a drink. She took it and smiled. His hands were covered in cuts and dust. Hers were the same. They were both survivors now. Later, they reached an old road, cracked and broken, stretching toward the hills. Along the sides were signs in human language. Jeria couldn't read them, but the warning colors were clear: danger, death, history. Rain led her to a bunker near the road. The door was half open, rusted and heavy. He pushed it slowly, revealing a staircase that went down into shadow. Jeria hesitated, but followed. Inside it was quiet, cold. The walls were covered in messages, carved words, scratched drawings. Human letters mixed with symbols she did not understand. Rain lit a lantern and handed it to her. They walked deeper. The bunker had beds, old food wrappers, torn clothing. A place once filled with voices, now buried in silence. Jeria touched a child's toy lying on a metal table. A small bear missing one eye. Her fingers trembled. She turned to find Rain holding a piece of paper. He stared at it for a long time, then handed it to her. She took it and froze. The words were in her language, Jerian script. Old but clear. We came here to escape the war. We were wrong. If anyone finds this, remember us. We didn't want to fight. The name at the bottom was familiar. It belonged to a cousin she thought had died long ago. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked at Rain. His eyes asked a question. She nodded slowly. Family. They stayed in the bunker. That night, no fire, just lantern light and silence. Jeria couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the message. Her people had been here. They had suffered too. Not just the humans. She sat beside Rain, who stared at the wall. He pulled out his music device and let it play softly. A song with no words. Just soft strings and slow rhythm. It filled the space between them like water in an empty glass. She closed her eyes. In that moment, she felt something different. Not just safety. Belonging. The next morning, they left the bunker and followed the road deeper into the valley. The air grew thick. Birds flew overhead, strange shapes against the light. For the first time since she crashed, she heard laughter. Not theirs. Distant. Faint. Voices. Ryan stopped. He crouched and pointed ahead. Jeria followed his eyes. In the distance, a small camp was built into the rocks. Smoke rose from a fire. Shadows moved between tents and machines. Rain held up 2 fingers, then pointed to himself. Then to her. She understood. Scouts. Quiet, careful. They moved closer through the trees. Step by step. Slow and silent. Jeria felt her old training return. Her feet remembered the rhythm. Her eyes scanned for danger, but this time she wasn't hunting. She was learning. As they got closer, she saw more clearly. Not soldiers. Survivors. Humans, and one Jerian child. Jeria froze. Her heart pounded. A child from her world, sitting near a fire, laughing with a human girl. Rain turned to her. His face showed the same surprise. Jeria stepped back, her mind spinning. How? Why? Then the sound of metal snapped behind them. A trap. Rain pushed her down as a net launched from the trees. It wrapped around him fast, lifting him off the ground. Jeria jumped to her feet. Searching for the source. From behind the rocks, figures appeared. Not soldiers, hunters, their faces covered in masks. Weapons raised. One of them shouted. A language she didn't know. Rain struggled in the net. Blood ran down his arm. Jeria stepped forward, hands raised. They aimed their guns at her. She looked at Rain. He was in pain, trying to reach for his knife. Jeria grabbed a stick from the ground and slammed it into the trap's power core. Sparks flew. The net snapped. Rain dropped to the ground hard. The hunter shouted again, this time more confused than angry. Rain got up, weapon ready, but Jeria stood between him and the hunters. She raised her hands. No fight. No war. One of the hunters stepped forward, pulling off his mask. He was human. Older, tired, his eyes locked with Jeria's. Then she heard a voice behind her. A girl's voice. He's with her. They're not enemies. Jeria turned. The Jerian child stood there, her small hand in a human girl's hand. No fear. No hate. The old man lowered his weapon. He looked at Jeria, then at Rain, then nodded once. Peace. They spent the night in the camp. Jeria sat with the child, who spoke her language fluently. The child told her of the humans who found her, who protected her when her pod crashed, who raised her when no one else came. Jeria listened, heart heavy and full. Rain's wound was cleaned by the older human. He didn't speak much, but his hands were gentle. Before sleep, Jeria and Rain sat by the fire. She turned to him. She pointed to herself, then to him, then to the stars. Above, Rain smiled. He pointed back, then drew a circle in the dirt. Together. Zheria nodded. The sky above them was broken, full of cracks and scars from years of war. But under that sky, something whole was growing, something they never expected. Hope. The fire burned low. Shadows danced along the rocky walls. Jeria sat close to Rain as the humans around them rested. The child she met earlier now slept between two older survivors, curled up in a blanket. Jeria kept glancing at the girl, trying to believe what she had seen. A child of her kind, raised by humans. Safe, alive, happy. She looked at Rain again. His arm was wrapped in cloth, stained dark with blood. The older man had cleaned the wound, but Rain said nothing about the pain. His face remained still, his jaw tight. Jeria reached for his arm. He pulled back at first. Then he let her touch it. Her hands were gentle. She removed the soaked cloth, cleaned the gash again using a fresh strip of fabric, then wrapped it slowly. Rain watched her. He didn't speak, but his eyes followed every move she made. His breathing slowed. He trusted her. Jeria remembered the first time she saw him, tall, cold, silent, a shadow behind the cage. Now he looked different, softer, human. The night was quiet. Only the wind outside made sound. Jeria sat beside him, neither prisoner nor guard anymore. Just two survivors watching flames. Rain took something from his bag, a metal disc. He pressed a button. A small light flickered, then a recording played, a voice. A woman's, laughing. Then a lullaby. Soft and full of warmth. Jeria tilted her head, listening. Rain stared into the fire. Jeria didn't ask who the voice belonged to. She already knew. He turned the recording off and placed the disc beside him. Jeria reached into her armor. She pulled out a small ring, own, a simple metal band engraved with a symbol. She showed it to Rain. His brow lifted. Jeria tapped her chest, then pointed to the ring. Sister. She was gone now. A pilot lost in the early years of the war. Jeria never found her body. Only the ring inside her wrecked shuttle. She had worn it every day since. Rain nodded. His hand brushed hers gently. Only for a second. It was enough. Morning came slow. The camp stirred with movement. Humans prepared supplies. Weapons were checked. Drones repaired. Jeria helped where she could. No one pushed her away. They treated her like one of their own. Rain helped an old man lift a damaged panel. He winced from the pain in his arm, but didn't stop. Jeria saw it. She walked over, pushed his hands aside, and lifted it herself. Rain smirked. He said something under his breath. She didn't understand the words, but she caught the meaning in his eyes. Thank you. Later that day, Rain motioned for her to follow him to the edge of the camp. They walked through scattered boulders until they reached a cliff. From there, they could see the valley stretch wide below. Broken ships, scars from old battles, smoke rising in the far distance. Jeria stood beside him, arms crossed. He pulled out the map. Pointed to a marked location near the mountains. She nodded. Then he traced another line, a shorter one, to a nearby radio tower. Signal. He wanted to contact someone. Jeria thought of her people. What would they do if they found her now? What would they say if they knew she walked beside a human, not in chains, but by choice? Rain folded the map and placed it back in his pack. They turned to leave. Then the explosion hit. The camp behind them lit up with fire. Smoke shot into the sky. Jeria's ears rang. She fell forward as the ground shook. Rain pulled her up fast. They ran. Back toward the camp. Screams filled the air. Weapons fired. Lights flashed. Jeria grabbed the fallen rifle. She didn't wait for orders. She moved through smoke and fire, her feet finding familiar ground. She ducked behind a truck, then fired at a shadow in the distance. Not bandits. Soldiers. But not human. Not Jerian either. Different armor, clean, high-tech, faces covered. Rain fired beside her, covering her movement. They pushed forward together, clearing the area inch by inch. The camp was in chaos. Civilians ran for cover. The old man who helped. Rain lay motionless near the fire pit. Jeria's heart pounded. Rain rushed forward, covering a child. He grabbed her, pulling her behind cover. A sniper shot hit the ground near his foot. Jeria turned and charged. She reached the shooter before he could reload. Her blade struck fast. The enemy fell. Rain looked at her with wide eyes. Jeria grabbed his arm, pulled him back. They regrouped with 2 other survivors behind a wall of crates. The girl from before clung to her leg. Shaking, Rain leaned against the crates, breathing heavy. His wound had reopened. Blood ran down his sleeve. Jeria ripped cloth from her coat, wrapped it fast. No hesitation. Then they heard it. A signal, loud, harsh. Not in any known language. Then the enemy began to retreat. Just like that. Gone. Vanished into the smoke. Rain stood slowly. Jeria looked around. Bodies everywhere. The camp was broken. People cried. One of the survivors turned to Rain, asked something. Fast, urgent. Rain shook his head. He didn't know. Jeria helped gather supplies. She found the child's drawing book among the ashes. She gave it back to her. The girl smiled through tears. That night, the survivors buried the dead. Silent prayers filled the air. Jeria sat beside Rain again. His face was pale. She took out the family stone again. Held it between them. He took it. Held it, then gave it back. 2 enemies bleeding side by side. Rain spoke softly. Jeria listened. She didn't understand the words, but she felt them. In every glance. In every breath. In every shared silence. They were more than allies now. They were bonded. By war. By loss. By the choice to protect, not destroy. When Jeria closed her eyes that night, she didn't dream of her home planet. She dreamed of the fire, of Rain's voice, of the girl who held her hand. And for the first time, she dreamed of staying. The sky was darker than before. Clouds moved like slow giants above the valley. Ash still floated in the air, carried by the wind. The camp was silent. No laughter, no music. Only the sound of repair and quiet grief. Jeria sat on a rock, her eyes fixed on the hills beyond the broken fences. She had wrapped her injured arm in cloth, though the pain was not from the wound. It was deeper. Rain stood nearby, helping the survivors lift fallen beams and clear the wreckage. His movements were slower now, careful, tired. The attack had taken something from all of them, but they were still standing. Later that day, while searching the edge of the camp, Jeria heard a soft buzz. A faint signal. One only her kind would recognize. She followed it, walking far from the others. It grew louder. She reached a tree, burned at the base. A small black orb rested in the dirt, pulsing with light. A Jerian drone. She dropped to one knee. Her fingers touched the surface. The message activated. A hologram rose above the device. The symbol of her fleet appeared, then a face. Her former commander, cold eyes, firm voice. Jeria, we know you are alive. We have tracked your signal. You are deep in enemy territory. We have sent a scout unit nearby. Mark your position. Lead the human to us. You will be rescued. You will be honored. Do not fail us again. The message ended. The drone powered down. Jeria stared at it, heart pounding. They knew. They were close, and they expected her to act. She stood, the drone in her hand, and walked back toward the camp slowly. Every step felt heavier. When she returned, Rain was sitting on a crate, cleaning his gear. His face lit up when he saw her. He raised a hand. She nodded, forcing a small smile. That night, Jeria sat alone near the edge of camp, the drone hidden in her bag. She looked up at the stars. What was she supposed to do? Her people believed she had been taken prisoner. They thought she was still loyal. They didn't know about Rain, about the child, about the fire, about the new world she had come to know. But they were still her people. Her blood. Her past. She heard footsteps. Rain sat beside her. They shared a long silence. Then she pointed To the stars. She whispered the word for home in her language. Rain looked at the sky 2. Then pointed at a different star. Spoke a word she didn't know. His home. So far apart. Jeria's fingers trembled. She opened her bag, pulled out the drone, and placed it between them. Rain looked down. His face changed. She showed him the message. He didn't understand the language, but he understood enough. His body stiffened. His hand moved toward his sidearm. Then he stopped. He looked at her. Really looked. Her face showed fear, guilt, shame, but not betrayal. She pointed to the map. Then drew a line toward the signal's location, then crossed it out. Rain's shoulders relaxed. He nodded once. Then he crushed the drone under his boot. It sparked, hissed, and died. The next morning, they prepared to leave the camp with a small group. The survivors were moving towards safer ground, a hidden shelter in the hills. Rain and Jeria walked at the front. She stayed close to him. Her eyes scanned the trees. She knew her people would come. They would expect a trap, and when it didn't happen, they would see her as a traitor. They reached a narrow pass near a riverbed. The ground was wet and soft. The group stopped to rest. Jeria moved to the side, checking the area. That's when she saw them, too. Jerian scouts hidden behind rocks. They didn't attack. They waited. Watching. Zheria stepped forward. They saw her. One raised his weapon but didn't fire. She held up her hands. The scouts lowered their weapons. One of them spoke in her language. Jeria, you were supposed to lead him here. We've been waiting for your signal. What are you doing with them? She looked back at Rain and the survivors, then at the scouts. They're not the monsters you told us about. The scout frowned. You've forgotten who you are. She shook her head. No. I finally remembered. One scout raised a small transmitter. Jeria moved fast. She slammed her body into his, knocking the device away. The other aimed his weapon. Rain appeared from the trees. He didn't fire, but he didn't back down. Jeria stood between them, hands out, breathing hard. Please, don't do this. The scouts hesitated. Then a voice came through the transmitter on the ground. The commander again. If she resists, eliminate her. The human too. Jeria looked at the scout holding the weapon. You don't have to follow that order. The scout's hands shook. He looked at Rain, then at her. Then lowered the weapon. Jeria picked up the transmitter and crushed it. I choose my path now, not theirs. The scouts disappeared into the trees. Jeria turned to Rayn. His face showed something more than surprise. It showed respect. That night, they built a fire near the river. The survivors gathered close. Jeria sat beside Rain, her head against his shoulder. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. She had made her choice, and it was him. The wind rolled low across the valley, whispering through broken trees and rusted metal. Jeria stood at the edge of a ridge, looking down at what remained of a battlefield. Burned machines, crushed helmets, the bones of 2 worlds tangled in the soil. Behind her, Rain packed the last of their supplies. The survivors were ready to move again. Each day pushed them further into the wild, further from the war, closer to something unknown. Jeria turned to him, her eyes heavy but steady. Rain walked over, handed her a bottle of water. She drank, then nodded once. A quiet thank you. They started walking together, the survivors following close behind. Every step forward felt like a step into a future that didn't exist yet, one they had to build with their own hands. They reached a high plateau by mid-morning. From there, a tall metal tower rose in the distance. Its sides were cracked, vines growing along the surface. The signal tower. Their last hope to send a message. Rain looked through his scope. No movement. Jeria stepped beside him. She pointed to the west. A safer path. He nodded. They moved as a group, slowly, watching every corner. By the time they reached the tower, the sun was already falling behind the hills. Rain climbed first. The latter groaned under his weight. Jeria followed, her hands gripping metal rungs rough with rust. At the top, they found the old console, dead screen. No power. Rain cursed under his breath. Then started working. Jeria watched his hands move fast, checking wires, rerouting energy cells. Sweat rolled down his temple. He was focused, determined. She stood beside him, eyes scanning the horizon. Something didn't feel right. The silence was too deep. Then she saw them, figures, dozens, moving through the forest below, shiny armor. Jerian soldiers. Rain noticed her expression. He turned, looked through the scope. He saw them too. Jeria grabbed the radio, spoke fast to the group below. Cover. Hide. Now Rain looked at her. She met his eyes. This was it. The signal tower roared to life with a hum. He turned back to the console, started broadcasting. Then a voice echoed through the tower. Harsh. Cold. Familiar. Jeria, step away from the human. This is your final chance. Return to your people. Leave him. You know what must be done. Jeria froze. The voice came from a drone above them, watching. Listening. Rain stared at it. His jaw tight. He reached for his weapon. Jeria stopped him. She looked up at the drone. Then spoke. He is not the enemy. The drone hovered lower. You are blind. He is using you, just like his kind used this planet. You were once a soldier. Now you are a traitor. Jeria stepped forward. No. I was blind before. You taught me hate. He showed me something else. Rain pulled the transmitter toward him. Changed frequencies. Tried sending a new signal. Then a shot rang out. Rain dropped. Jeria screamed. She caught him before he hit the ground. Blood soaked her hands. A sniper. She dragged him behind a steel plate. Heart pounding. He was breathing. Barely. His eyes met hers. He tried to speak. She pressed her hand over his wound. Stay with me. She turned toward the drone. Her voice loud. Clear. If you want someone, take me. But leave them. Silence. Then footsteps. Jerian soldiers surrounded the tower. Weapons raised. Jeria stood tall. Hands up. Don't shoot. I will come with you. The commander stepped forward. Then end this. Prove your loyalty. End him. Right now. He handed her a weapon. She looked at it. Then at Rain. His eyes were closed now. His chest rose slow. The commander moved closer. Pick it up. Do it. Show us who you are. Jeria reached down. She lifted the weapon. Held it firm. The air was thick. The silence sharper than any blade. She turned toward Rain. Then back to the soldiers. No, I won't. She aimed at the commander. Fired. The shot echoed. Chaos broke loose. Rain rolled over, coughing. Jeria pulled him to cover. The survivors below joined the fight. Smoke filled the air. Flashes of red and blue lit the sky. Jeria fought like fire. Fast. Precise. Without fear. Rain tried to rise, but she pushed him back down. Stay low. I'll protect you now. The battle lasted minutes, but felt like hours. Then silence again. The soldiers retreated. Broken. Scattered. Jeria dropped to her knees beside Rain, her hands shaking. He looked at her, whispered her name. She leaned close. He smiled. You chose me. She nodded. Tears ran down her cheeks. Every time. The sky above them turned purple. Stars blinking into view. Rain closed his eyes. Jeria held him close. Below, the survivors gathered. They lit small fires. Sang soft songs, mourning the fallen, honoring the brave. Jeria stayed at Rain's side through the night, holding his hand, watching the sky. Waiting for him to open his eyes again. She had made her choice, and it was love. Morning broke slowly over the hills. The sky shifted from black to blue as sunlight touched the broken tower. Smoke rose in soft trails. The battle was over. The field was quiet. Survivors gathered around small fires, treating wounds, sharing food, and waiting for the next order. Jeria sat beside Rain, his head resting on her shoulder. He was alive, weak but breathing. His skin was pale. His pulse was slow, but he was still fighting. Just like always, she hadn't slept. Her armor was torn, her arms covered in cuts and blood, but none of it mattered. She had saved him. Just as he had saved her. One of the survivors approached. A young man with sharp eyes and a soft voice. He handed Jeria a warm cloth. She nodded, wiped her face, and handed it back. He didn't speak. He simply placed a blanket over Rain and walked away. The radio tower crackled to life again. A voice came through. Not Jerian. Not human. Something else. Jeria stood. Fast. Rain opened one eye. They both listened. The voice was calm, slow, speaking a language neither of them understood. Then it shifted, changing into something closer to theirs. You are not enemies. We see you. We hear you. Jeria looked at Rain. His expression was unreadable. Another signal followed. A flash of light in the sky. A shape appeared above the clouds. Not a ship. Not like anything they had seen before. It hovered without sound. Its surface glowed, shifting like liquid metal. Symbols ran across its sides, living light. Ancient and new at once. The survivors pointed. Some reached for weapons. Jeria raised a hand. No. Wait. The craft slowly descended. It stopped just above the tower, casting a soft glow across the group. The radio hissed again. We watched you fight. We watched you choose. You broke the pattern. You ended the cycle. Rain sat up slowly, using Jeria's shoulder for support. He looked up at the ship. Who are you? The voice replied. The ones before war. The ones after silence. We are the witness. The balance. The origin. Jeria's heart raced. Why now? Why reveal yourselves? Because you did. The craft opened at its center. A beam of light touched the ground, not a weapon. An invitation. Jeria looked at Rain. His eyes met hers. She helped him stand. They walked together toward the light. No fear, no doubt. As they stepped inside, the world outside faded. The noise of war, the pain of loss, the hunger for revenge. All of it disappeared. They stood in a chamber of light. All around them, images danced. Planets, stars, civilizations, extinctions, rebirth. Then a voice. Not from the air, but from within their minds. Long ago, we watched as your two races grew apart. Fear turned into hate. Misunderstanding became war. We waited for one moment of truth. One bond strong enough to stop the collapse. You are that bond. Jeria reached for Rain's hand. He took it without hesitation. The voice continued. We offer knowledge, peace, a path forward. But only if you walk it together. Jeria stepped forward. We will. Rain followed. We already have. The chamber shifted. A panel rose from the floor. It displayed both human and Jerian symbols. Jeria reached out, placed her hand over her mark. Rain did the same. A pulse of light shot through the ship. Outside, the survivors watched in silence. The ship began to rise, then hover once again. A new message echoed through the tower's speakers. A new age begins. Not ruled by fear, not chained by history, but led by unity. Jeria and Rain returned to the ground, changed, not in body, in spirit, in purpose. The survivors gathered around them. Rain raised his voice. No more sides, no more borders. From now on, we survive together. Jeria spoke next. And not just survive. We build, we heal. We become something better. The survivors cheered. The alien craft vanished into the sky, gone without sound. But its presence remained, in the air, in the light, in their hearts. Days passed. Then weeks. Together, humans and Jerians built a new camp. Not a base, not a fortress. A home. Jeria helped raise tents and clean rivers. Rain taught children how to mend wires and build tools. They laughed often, cried less. Every night, they sat together under the stars. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they didn't, but they always stayed close. One night, Jeria pulled out her family stone. She handed it to Rain. He didn't ask why. He knew. She was no longer part of the old world. He was her family now, and she was his. Months later, the first united signal was sent across the stars. Not a threat, not a warning, just a message. We are here. We are ready. We are together. Far away, on different planets. Others heard it. Some ignored it. Some feared it. But some listened, and some believed. Jeria stood beside Rain as the stars lit up with new messages, new signals, new voices. They had started something. No one could stop. Not a war. A future. Together, they had proved something powerful, something eternal. Humanity was never alone, and neither were they.